Michael Landon, one of the most beloved faces in American television, wasn't born with that name. He came into the world as Eugene Orowitz on October 31st, 1936, in Queens, New York. His early life was far from the warm family scenes he would later act out on screen. Instead, young Eugene grew up in a home full of tension and emotional pain. His parents couldn't have been more different. His father was a Jewish actor, and his mother was an Irish Catholic dancer. But instead of blending their backgrounds, their differences created constant conflict. His mother disliked Jews. His father disliked Catholics. Caught in the middle of these fights was Eugene, confused and lonely. He didn't feel like he truly belonged to either world. One moment from his childhood left a lasting scar. On the day of his bar mitzvah, when Eugene should have been celebrated, his mother revealed a cruel secret. She had secretly baptized him as a baby and mocked the Jewish ceremony as a joke. For Eugene, this wasn't just embarrassing, it was deeply hurtful. It symbolized his struggle to find where he belonged, a feeling that would stay with him all his life. But his mother's behavior went far beyond that. She suffered from severe mental health issues and attempted suicide several times. One day, when Eugene was just 10 years old, they were at the beach when his mother calmly walked into the ocean, telling him she was going to drown herself. Though Eugene didn't even know how to swim properly, he ran into the water after her, terrified. In his panic, he punched her in the face to get her attention and stop her. She walked back to shore as if nothing had happened and started playing in the sand with Eugene's younger sister. Eugene later called this the worst day of his life. The stress affected him so badly that he became physically ill for years. At home, things didn't get any better. Eugene struggled with bedwetting until he was 12, and his mother humiliated him in cruel ways. She would hang his wet sheets out the window just as the school bus passed, ensuring his classmates saw them. Eugene tried to hide this from his peers, even sneaking to laundromats so he wouldn't be embarrassed. This painful part of his childhood haunted him for years, but he would later draw on these memories for his semi-autobiographical film The Loneliest Runner, a story about a boy facing similar shame. For Eugene, this difficult home life, filled with conflict, humiliation, and emotional trauma, shaped the man he would become. The loneliness and rejection he experienced left scars, but they also gave him a drive to prove himself and escape the pain of his childhood. This was just the beginning of his journey, and the pain that began at home would go on to influence every chapter of his life, even as he rose to fame. For Eugene Orowitz, escaping his troubled home life meant finding refuge elsewhere, and he found it in sports. In high school at Collingswood High in New Jersey, Eugene didn't just participate, he excelled. He became a standout athlete, particularly in track and field. His specialty was the javelin throw, and at just 17 years old, he set a national record with a throw of 193 feet, 4 inches. This achievement gave him hope for a different future. His impressive performance earned him an athletic scholarship to the University of Southern California, USC, where he dreamed of Olympic glory. For a while, it seemed like his life was finally on track. Athletics became his identity, a place where he could succeed and escape the chaos he had known at home. But fate had other plans. When Eugene arrived at USC, something strange happened. His javelin throws started losing distance, and he couldn't figure out why. Determined to fix the problem, he changed his throwing technique, but disaster struck. He tore ligaments in his shoulder, an injury that ended his athletic career almost overnight. His dream of competing in the Olympics was shattered, and Eugene found himself lost. He dropped out of USC, unsure of what to do next. He took on a series of odd jobs to make ends meet, loading freight, working as a stock boy, and even pumping gas. It was a far cry from the bright future he had imagined, and for a while, it seemed that his life had taken a dead-end turn. But it was during this time that an unexpected opportunity appeared. While working at a gas station near Warner Brothers Studios, Eugene met an acting coach by chance. The coach saw something in him and encouraged him to audition for acting roles. Eugene took the advice and soon found himself stepping into a completely new world. However, there was one more change he needed to make. His birth name, Eugene Orowitz, didn't exactly sound like a Hollywood star's name. Searching for something more appealing, he looked through a phone book and chose a name that sounded strong and memorable, Michael Landon. With that simple choice, Eugene Orowitz became Michael Landon, and his life began to shift in a completely new direction. Landon's first big break came in 1957, when he was cast in a low-budget horror film called I Was a Teenage Werewolf. The movie, made for just $82,000, became a surprise hit, earning over $2 million. Landon's emotional performance as a troubled teenager resonated with young audiences, capturing the anger and confusion of adolescence. Even author Stephen King later praised the film for how well it portrayed teenage struggles. Almost overnight, Michael Landon became a teen idol. Offers for more film and TV roles started pouring in, and suddenly, a new path had opened, one that would soon lead him to fame, fortune, and influence. But while Hollywood was giving him a second chance, the emotional wounds from his past were never far behind. They would shape not only his drive to succeed, but also his relationships and behavior as his star continued to rise. Michael Landon's career took its next major step in 1959 when he landed a role that would change his life forever. Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza. This wasn't just another TV Western, it was a groundbreaking show. Bonanza became one of the first television series to air entirely in color and quickly became a Sunday night tradition for families across the country. Audiences fell in love with the Cartwright family. Lorne Greene played Ben, the wise and strong father. Pernell Roberts was Adam, the responsible eldest son. Dan Blocker became a fan favorite as the gentle giant Haas, and Michael Landon, as the youngest son Little Joe, stole scenes with his charm, good looks, and emotional vulnerability. Bonanza soared in popularity. By the mid-1960s, it was the #1 show in America, with millions of viewers tuning in every week. Landon's fame skyrocketed. He became a household name, admired not only for his performance, but also for his wholesome image, an image that would follow him throughout his career. But Landon didn't want to remain just an actor reading lines. He was ambitious and curious, always watching what happened behind the camera. He paid close attention to the directors, writers, and crew. He wanted more control over the stories being told, and soon, he began to pursue that goal. In 1962, Landon wrote his first script for Bonanza. He admitted later that it was a difficult experience. He finished the script in just 2 days, but it ignited a new passion in him. From then on, Landon's role on the show grew beyond acting. He would go on to write 21 episodes and direct 14, shaping the emotional tone of Bonanza and helping it stand out from other westerns on TV. His scripts focused more on characters and emotions than gunfights, giving the show more heart. Behind the scenes, Landon became known for his intense work ethic. He pushed himself and the crew hard, often working long days and demanding high standards. Some respected him for his dedication. Others found his perfectionism exhausting. In 1972, tragedy struck the Bonanza family. Dan Blocker, who played Haas and was Landon's close friend, died suddenly after surgery. The loss devastated Landon. He grieved deeply, and it showed in how he approached the show after Blocker's death. Landon helped rewrite scripts to honor Blocker's character in a way that was rare on television at the time. But even as Landon rose in power and influence, cracks began to show beneath his polished public image. His drive to control every aspect of production often created tension on set. Fame had given him authority, but it also fed the perfectionism and need for control that would later become defining, and sometimes destructive, parts of his career. As Bonanza approached its final years, Michael Landon was already thinking about what would come next, and what followed would cement his legacy even further, while also revealing more of the struggles and conflicts that lay behind his smiling face. When Bonanza ended in 1973, after a successful 14-year run, Michael Landon was far from done with television. In fact, he was preparing for an even bigger role, not just as an actor, but as the driving creative force behind a new series, Little House on the Prairie. Premiering in 1974, Little House was based on Laura Ingalls Wilder's books about a pioneer family's struggles and triumphs in the 19th century American Midwest. The show appeared wholesome on the surface, filled with scenes of family values, hard work, and emotional stories. But behind the camera, things were far more complicated. Landon played Charles Ingalls, the caring, devoted father, and quickly became the face of the show. However, unlike Bonanza, this time Landon was in charge of almost everything. He wasn't just acting. He was also the executive producer, main writer, and frequent director. Every creative decision flowed through him, and he made sure the show reflected his vision. His perfectionism was clear from the beginning. Even small details had to meet his standards. For instance, the real-life Charles Ingalls had a beard, but Landon refused to grow one for the role because he thought it would make him look older or less appealing. Historical accuracy came second to Landon's desire to present a certain image. At first, many admired Landon's leadership and attention to detail, but it soon became clear that his desire for control sometimes created a difficult environment. Actress Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Mar Ingalls, described how their working relationship changed after the first season. When she asked for a pay raise, Landon rejected her request, saying her character was less important than the children on the show. After that, Grassel said Landon began treating her differently. She described moments when he embarrassed her in front of the crew, making crude jokes about her appearance during romantic scenes and cutting many of her lines from episodes. Other cast members began to notice the tension between the two. Landon's strict and demanding management style didn't stop there. The dressing rooms provided for the cast were small and uncomfortable. He expected scenes to be completed in one take to save time and money. Any delays or mistakes meant lost film, and Landon made sure the actors knew it. Some appreciated how efficiently he ran the set, but for others, the atmosphere felt pressured and unforgiving. Even the younger actors, including Melissa Sue Anderson and Melissa Gilbert, saw both sides of Landon. He could be warm and fatherly one day, then sarcastic and short-tempered the next. His mood swings kept people on edge. Yet despite these behind-the-scenes struggles, Little House on the Prairie was a huge success. Viewers saw an idealized version of frontier life and a loving, dependable father figure in Landon. But the real story behind the scenes was far more complicated. And as Landon's career soared, his personal life was about to fall apart in ways that would affect everyone around him. While millions of viewers tuned in each week to watch Michael Landon as the perfect husband and father on Little House on the Prairie, his personal life was heading in a very different direction. Behind his warm smile and fatherly image, Landon was facing private struggles that would soon spill into public view and change everything. Landon's issues with control and perfectionism didn't just apply to his work. They affected his personal relationships too. Early in his career, he had married Dodie Levy-Fraser, a woman who had supported him during his difficult early years. But while still married to Fraser, Landon began an affair with Marjorie Lynn No. The affair ended his first marriage, leaving deep scars on his first family. Landon's marriage to Lynn No lasted nearly 20 years, and for much of that time, it seemed solid from the outside. But behind closed doors, he was already struggling with the pressures of fame and success. As early as his 20s, Landon was diagnosed with anxiety and began taking Miltown, a popular tranquilizer of the time. What started as a prescription turned into a dangerous habit. At the peak of Bonanza's fame, Landon admitted to taking as many as 50 or 60 pills 3 times a day, sometimes up to 180 pills daily. The toll this took on his health was severe. He often felt sick or exhausted during filming. Alcohol became another way he tried to cope with stress. He developed a habit of sipping vodka from a coffee cup, a trick he used to hide his drinking from those around him, even on set. His temper, fueled by stress, pills, and alcohol, became more visible. During a promotional trip to Sweden for Bonanza, Landon lashed out at a reporter who criticized Americans. He cleared the man's plate from the table and punched him in front of everyone. Police had to step in. Episodes like this revealed a different side of Landon that most fans never saw. By the 1980s, during the run of Little House, Landon became involved in another scandal that would deeply affect both his personal life and his workplace. He began a secret relationship with Cindy Clerico, an 18-year-old makeup artist on the show. Landon was in his late 40s at the time. When the affair became public, it destroyed his marriage to Lynn No and divided his family. The affair also affected the atmosphere on set. Melissa Gilbert and Melissa Sue Anderson, 2 of the show's young stars, openly sided with No and refused to let Clerico touch their makeup. Catherine McGregor, who played Harriet Olsen, expressed her disappointment openly. The once close-knit cast felt divided and uncomfortable. Despite the backlash, Landon didn't back down. He told critics, "Like my work or don't like my work, but don't live my life. It's not yours." His career survived the scandal, but his reputation as America's ideal father figure was badly damaged. Even as Little House remained a popular show, Landon's personal life was now shadowed by turmoil, and his next project would reveal even more of the cracks behind his carefully crafted image. After Little House on the Prairie ended in 1983, Michael Landon didn't take a break. Instead, he quickly launched another project, Highway to Heaven, which premiered in 1984. In this new show, Landon played Jonathan Smith, an angel sent to Earth to help people in need. The show was a departure from the westerns and pioneer dramas that had defined his career, but it carried the same themes: kindness, hope, and redemption. Highway to Heaven was a hit, especially in its first few years. Audiences appreciated its positive, emotional stories at a time when many other TV shows were becoming darker and more cynical. Landon wasn't just the star. He created the show, produced it, wrote most of the episodes, and directed many of them. In typical fashion, he controlled nearly every detail. Behind the scenes, though, Landon's personal demons were catching up with him again. His drinking had worsened. Crew members described how he would keep vodka in a coffee mug, sipping throughout long filming days, even during scenes with children. Some noticed how his health seemed to be declining, likely due to years of substance abuse and stress. Despite these problems, Highway to Heaven continued to perform well. Landon also made efforts to use the show to make a difference. He hired real-life cancer patients and people with disabilities as actors and crew, giving them opportunities that were rare in Hollywood at the time. But in 1989, after 5 seasons, NBC made a decision that shocked Landon. Without much warning, they pulled Highway to Heaven from its regular time slot. The remaining episodes were shown out of order and in odd time slots where few people could find them. A Christmas episode, for example, was aired in August. It felt like a clear signal from NBC that they were finished with Landon's work. This was deeply personal for Landon. For nearly 30 years, he had been one of NBC's most valuable stars, delivering hit after hit for the network. The sudden cancellation and disrespectful handling of his show felt like a betrayal. His longtime friend and producer, Ket McRae, was furious. Landon himself publicly criticized NBC for treating him as if he no longer mattered. In his final act with NBC, Landon made a symbolic and defiant statement. When he produced Little House, The Last Farewell, a TV movie meant to wrap up the Little House story, he ended the film by blowing up the entire town set with dynamite. The destruction was both a dramatic conclusion to the story and a metaphor for Landon's relationship with NBC. He would rather see the world he built destroyed than handed over to a network that had discarded him. The network that had once depended on him had now turned its back. And as Landon stepped away from NBC, his health was quietly worsening, a battle that would soon become public in the most heartbreaking way. By the early 1990s, Michael Landon was ready to move into a new phase of life. He had remarried, this time to Cindy Clerico, the young makeup artist he met on Little House on the Prairie, and he was spending more time with his family, enjoying life outside of Hollywood's spotlight. After decades of hard work and creative control, Landon was finally slowing down. But in April 1991, everything changed. While on a family ski trip in Utah, Landon was suddenly struck by an intense headache. When he returned home, concerned by the pain, he went to see a doctor. The news he received was devastating. He had pancreatic cancer, an aggressive and often deadly disease. Even worse, it had already spread, leaving him with no chance for recovery. Landon's reaction to the diagnosis reflected the way he had lived his life. He met the news head-on. Rather than retreat in private, he chose to speak publicly about his condition. In May 1991, just weeks after his diagnosis, he made a memorable appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Though visibly weaker, Landon kept his trademark humor, cracking jokes and smiling throughout the interview. But he also spoke with striking honesty. He admitted that his years of smoking and drinking had likely contributed to his illness, a rare and frank acknowledgement for a celebrity at that time. Landon didn't try to pretend he was perfect or deny the role his choices had played in his declining health. Even in his final days, he seemed determined to take responsibility for his past. During interviews, Landon also opened up about his personal failings, his infidelities, his struggles as a father and husband, and the emotional price of fame. He didn't sugarcoat his story. What stood out most, though, was his determination to live as long as possible for the sake of his children. He talked about wanting to see them grow up and about treasuring every day he had left. But Landon's time was short. Pancreatic cancer is one of the most aggressive cancers, and his condition worsened quickly. Just 7 weeks after his Tonight Show interview, on July 1st, 1991, Michael Landon died at his home in Malibu. His wife Cindy was by his side, holding his hand as he passed away. He was only 54 years old. The news shocked and saddened millions of fans around the world. Michael Landon had spent decades portraying kind, noble, and warm-hearted characters. His death reminded many that, behind the roles, he was a complex and deeply human figure, someone who had lived a life full of contradictions, triumphs, and personal struggles. NBC, the network that had dropped a show just a few years earlier, quickly aired a tribute special, Michael Landon, Memories with Laughter and Love. For many, the tribute felt bittersweet. The same network that had discarded him was now celebrating his legacy, but it was too late for Landon to see it. Michael Landon's death in 1991 left a deep impact on both fans and the entertainment industry. His passing at just 54 years old felt premature, especially for a man who had spent decades creating television that millions of families welcomed into their homes every week. The characters he played, Little Joe Cartwright, Charles Ingalls, Jonathan Smith, embodied warmth, strength, kindness, and a sense of decency that made him seem larger than life. But while his television image was nearly flawless, the real Michael Landon was far more complex. The public adored the characters he played, but behind the scenes, Landon's life had been filled with struggles. His need for control on set made him both respected and feared. Some saw him as a brilliant leader who brought heart to every project he worked on. Others described him as demanding, sarcastic, and at times cruel when his perfectionism got the better of him. His personal life mirrored those same contradictions. He had been unfaithful in multiple relationships, including during his long marriage to Lynn No, whose heart he broke when he left her for Cindy Clerico. His relationships with his children were sometimes tense, and his reliance on alcohol and prescription drugs strained his family life further. Even so, Landon remained defiant. He refused to let others define him or dictate how he should live. His attitude was summed up in his famous quote to his critics, "Like my work or don't like my work, but don't live my life. It's not yours." In many ways, that defiance became a defining feature of his personality, whether he was challenging NBC over their decisions or pushing back against those who questioned his personal choices. Professionally, Landon left an undeniable legacy. He starred in and shaped 3 of the most successful shows in television history: Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, and Highway to Heaven. He wasn't just an actor. He was a writer, director, and producer who put his creative stamp on every project he touched. His shows may have looked simple, even sentimental, but they dealt with real emotions and offered viewers comfort and hope. After his death, many of his former colleagues spoke openly about the complicated man they had worked with. Some remembered him as generous and protective, especially with younger cast members. Others recalled his quick temper and biting sarcasm. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: Landon was driven by passion and an intense work ethic that shaped every moment of his career. Today, decades after his passing, Michael Landon shows continue to air in reruns, attracting new generations of viewers. His legacy endures not because he was perfect, but because he was human. He struggled, failed, succeeded, hurt others, loved deeply, and worked tirelessly. In the end, that's why people still talk about him, not as a flawless hero, but as a man who lived a full, complicated, unforgettable life.